Hi, I'm Sam F.
I'm Asher.
I'm Sanjay.
And I'm Aaron, and welcome back to day 2 of Portal's virtual festival. The festival that would have been were it not for the nasty viral elephant in the room. Hopefully you've already caught our content on Saturday. If you've not, then that video is uploaded to our YouTube channel and to our Facebook page. So go and have a look at that first, because Saturday comes before Sunday.
And so we'll be discussing all the bands that are playing on Sunday, along with interviews with some of those bands as well, talking about the music and talking about why we booked them.
We'll have into some Parachute for Gordo, We Never Learn to Live, Human Pyramids, Boss Keloid, OHHMS, Alpha Male Tea Party, and We Lost the Sea.
And we'll also be playing some clips of music and chatting about A Burial at Sea, Modern Rituals, Elevant, Bicurious, Pijn, and of course our Sunday night headliners, Nordic Giants. So to kick things off, I chatted to Laura from Parachute for Gordo. Parachute for Gordo are an up-and-coming sort of alt-math post-rock band who formed in Aldershot. And they've really kind of expanded their sound on their latest album, which we discussed a lot. And Laura joined me from Berlin, where we discussed that and other things. This is Asher here from Portals, joined by Laura from Parachute for Gordo. Thanks for joining us, Laura. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing all right, as well as can be in these crazy times, right? So, yes.
Yeah, unusual situation, but thanks for joining me to ask a few questions, to answer a few questions. So kicking things off, you guys are from Aldershot. Tell us a bit more about the music scene there, how the band formed, and for anyone who might not have been there, for example.
It might go off the radar for many people, but it does actually have like a fantastic music venue called the West End Centre, which drives a lot of bands, which was run by a guy called Barney, who managed Ruben, and so Jamie Lennon plays there a lot, and quite a lot of the sort of hardcore scene of like 100 Reasons came from Aldershot, and then I guess we formed about sort of 10 or so more years later, and it's an area where people are not so sort of almost London eccentric, so they just willing to give things a try and don't worry about the results. So it's usually a bit wonky and weird, and we have an arts venue that allows us to be wonky and weird and promotes that. So without that music venue in Aldershot, I probably wouldn't be doing it right now. So it's an unassuming place, but amazing to drive this sort of scene. And they've also paired us up with bands like And So I'll Watch You From Afar and others, so they will have major touring bands in that venue. But the outside it looks like a school, but inside there's amazing stuff going on, and it's had the same sound engineer Jules there for 20 years, and like Happy Mondays to PJ Harvey. So yeah, it's basically that venue that makes that town.
But now you're much more spread around the band across Europe, right? You're in Berlin, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that where you are now?
Yes.
Yeah.
How?
I mean, that must make things difficult, right? Arranging practices and.
Well, yeah, I think we originally thought because this year was unfortunately due to what's happened, but it actually was picking up quite a lot. So we just wrote the new album, Best Understood by Children and Animals, and we were like, and I got some opportunity of work over here, so we thought we would go back, rehearse, do a set of tours or shows, and it was going to sort of work a bit like that. And EasyJet's pretty cheap, so I was like, 50 quid return or whatever, when you could fly, and it was going to work a little bit like that. But it's interesting in how everyone's adapted to this sort of way of working, and we've already said that we might sort of use this sort of remote. So we've always written mostly within the room, so but this way we're sort of using an advantage to sort of like send back forward more loops, connections, that sort of way. So we're hoping that actually might drive a new way of them writing the new stuff, perhaps.
seems like things are starting to kind of pick up for you guys. I know you got some good sort of radio play. I think you were reviewed in Kerrang and had some festivals and stuff lined up, obviously, before this all happened. What do you think's kind of made the difference? It seems like you guys are kind of taking that step up to the next level.
Yeah, so we got like reviewed in Kerrang and also Prog magazine,
Awesome.
and yeah, we're going to play Our Tangent this year that we were very excited about, as well as playing for you guys. Yeah, I think this new album, I knew that I wanted to sort of try and step up the production. We've always done it all ourselves, all the other recordings, and they all like the second and third were all done sort of within. Yeah, the second one was done in 3 hours in one room, all done in together. The third one was done in Austria in an abandoned building, which was done in a couple of days, but that was quite a chaotic but a fun idea. But then this one, I was like, okay, maybe to step it up. And then a friend of mine introduced me to Mark Roberts, who's recorded Delta Sleep and lots of other bands like Physics House Band. And I spoke to Mark and I said to him, and I like his attitude towards music making. He was sort of like, he went to art school. He got totally what I sort of was talking about production wise. And so we recorded half of it at Brighton Electric and half of it I worked for the University of Creative Arts. So I got access to the new studio there for a bit of half the album, which Mark, the drummer, produced. And I think we just had a bit of a, we always were like, what's the word? Had massive impatience with time signatures and sections, right? So we just used to like, but then we like calm down. Can we just groove on one thing? And then me and John started to listen to a lot of like krautrock and sort of Talking Heads to Gang of Four to all this sort of stuff. And then we just started to sort of like think about groove and I think that's the fundamental of this album. It's got a real strong rhythm, sort of melodic identity, and I also, my guitar started to use a lot more looping, so obviously classic DL4 and stuff like this. So I do a lot of like extensions of because I use Ableton Live as well, so I was quite I had a vision for how my guitar should sound in this album. So when I recorded Mark Roberts, I was out of like massive sort of 2 amp stacks. I had it in stereo. I really wanted to bring that sort of guitar spatialness to it. So all of this stuff. And when I first heard Mark Roberts' recordings back, I was like, okay, this is the first time I've ever recorded something that sounded like something in my head. And then so it went from there. It was just like that sort of vibe was more for the new one. Something you could dance to perhaps a bit more. I think it's just like a bit of a patience and maturity, I guess. Like I think sometimes when you start out, you just want, like I say, just like you make impact by changing it up so much. But then I think that can almost get a little fatigued watching that also. So then you think, if you're instrumental, what do people want? How do you not lose interest? And how do you stop going into the crescendo sort of build up of posts, right? And I'm fundamentally quite a post guitar player. So it's almost like, how can we combine, like the band joke that I'm more like the robot, like almost delayed, sort of like systematic guitar player, and then they're very groove oriented, so this push and pull between. A friend of ours who's on Beth Shalom Records, and then he really we've worked with Joe quite a lot, and he got behind it, and then I think that also helped.
So tell me a little bit more about kind of the inspiration for the album. Any like particular? Well, I guess you mentioned to an extent some of the influences there, and I wanted to know as well where these sort of song and album titles have come from, which are quite sort of playful.
I think we're quite a band of sort of probably a sense of humor, like especially John, who's the sort of front guy, turns on stage with a sweatband on and dances like a kid himself. I just think so we got his daughter, who's like 1, did a picture of a lion, and then we were like, okay, because sometimes people can take themselves a bit seriously with sort of some like sort of black and white photography or something, and I love like fine art stuff and you know, this sort of you know, depending on the project, but this project's always been about like just like pure joyousness. So because we're in this realm where we want to be sort of contemplating what we're watching, right? And we love like and I love like Mars Volta and complexity and depth and Radiohead and all this sort of stuff. But I wonder if you could do it with a bit of a grin in your face and a bit of like pure energy.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you can be like Muso with a smile, basically. So that's basically, I think, what we went for. Cool. We did a launch show at the West End Centre of this album, and there's a song called "A Dingo Ate My Disco." So we wondered if we can do like a disco track, which we did, and we asked to put a disco ball in the centre of the room. I wore like a sequence dress, just to get people lost in it, basically.
Can you tell me about your guy? All of your sort of plans for the future. Hopefully, things will be kind of coming back a bit more to normal life fairly soon. What sort of things have you got sort of lined up? What's the?
I think, the plan was this year to really. We wanted to be a band that toured, basically, and I think we gained a bit of momentum. Like, you asked us to play Portals and in Victoria, which was a great night, and we were lucky enough to sort of like, I think when you go down the line, you get to play with bands that you admire and you respect, right? Like we played with Adam Betts and Gallops and and also, like I told you when we spoke, I'm doing sort of a PhD all about the post-rock scene and math rock scene, and so the plan is just always to just try and play Europe and good shows in UK and just build up a momentum like that, because that's what it's all about, really, is trying to connect with people, and just like what you guys are doing, right? You just want to create a moment in time where you think like, screw everything else, just be in a room and be present. So that's mainly, and I think it's great like what you guys are doing, like I know you've got like Big Lads to play recently, and we played with them. And people like that, we've got to live on this sort of left field underground UK music scene, and people to present stuff that doesn't make sense. It's amazing. So keep it up, guys.
That was Laura and Asher having a chat there with Parachute for Gordo. Good job, Asher. That was great. So we've had the real privilege over the last couple of years of working with some fantastic labels around the country. We've had Lonely Voyage Records, who have been stalwarts of ours and great supporters, and have had a huge number of their bands from their roster joining us. Similarly with Big Scary Monsters, who have had their own pop-up at our last festival and have generally been a super collaborative partner to us. And this year we were really excited to have a broader partnership again with Stage for Holy Raw, who are absolutely without a doubt one of our favorite labels in the UK and release some of the most progressive, forward-thinking music in the country right now, and also internationally. Folks, what do you think about Holy Raw? What I know we all love them, but what do we love about them? I think there's this eccentricity and this eclecticism to what they do that really means that any single record you listen to from theirs, you know it's going to be good, and you don't necessarily know how.
Every single thing that comes out on that label is worth listening to. What's really fascinating about them is that they've really expanded their repertoire. Originally, they were kind of known for the heavier, maybe slightly doom or grungy or noisy stuff. But really, with the likes of A.A. Williams joining their roster, they have really developed this kind of gathering of bands that have a very similar ethos in the way they produce music.
Yeah, I think that even if you don't like heavy music, there will still be a bunch of bands on that label that you like. And obviously you've mentioned a few of them, but if you are into heavy music, they are probably the best label for it in the UK. And I remember we were chatting about it, I suppose, about this time last year. We just sort of went, should we just maybe we could do a stage with them next year. Let's just ping them an email, and we thought, well, maybe we'll never hear back, who knows. But they came back to us fairly quickly, being like, yeah, a bunch of us were at the festival last year because a few of our bands were playing, and we're well up for doing it. So that's how it all
That was the thing. We kind of realised that we were going to end up booking a load of their bands anyway, just because they have such a fantastic roster that, yeah, you're right. We just thought, why not get in touch and see if we can do something together?
I mean, that's the thing. Like, the hallmark of a good label is that there's an element of curation involved, right? So you've already said that there's an inherent trust that if Holy War sign a band and put out an album, the odds are that it's going to be of a certain quality, as well as within a Venn diagram, admittedly an increasingly broadening Venn diagram, but still within sort of you can have some taste expectations as well. But I think beyond that as well, you need to have when it comes to labels, you want to have they need to be run by people with the right ethos at the same time. Totally. And we've already obviously name checked a couple of other labels that we've worked with, and there are plenty of small independent labels, certainly within the UK, that are doing things right and doing things well. But it is definitely true of Holy Raw that they clearly care about their artists, they care about looking after them, and that's not always a conversation that happens in public very often. In terms of the record label industry is a difficult and hurdle-filled one for artists to navigate, and obviously history has been populated with all sorts of problems between labels and their rosters. So that led to a better breed, and of that, Holy War, as Sam, as you said, I think are really pushing the boundaries of music tastes, as well as making sure that they go about it in the right way.
And I think it says something about it that when we were discussing how to build this stage, which we had planned with the team at Holy Raw, our biggest challenge was struggling to fit all these bands in. We had so many ideas about bands from not just the UK, but from around the world who they help publish in this country. And honestly, our biggest hurdle was just trying to find a way that we can make this work, because we only had so many slots. And that's a really wonderful challenge to have. And we were really proud of the lineup that we have managed to put together in the end.
As we were talking about before, Holy Raw have expanded their repertoire into bands that do not necessarily fill that heavy, quote unquote, sound that we're typically used to hearing from them. And We Never Learn to Live are a band very much of my ilk, coming from the post-hardcore early 2000s influences. They have a kind of stunning range of quite atmospheric songwriting, with Sean's vocals over the top being a through line. And with the new album, The Sleepwalk Transmissions, they've definitely kind of increased their diversity of their sound. On the record, they have some very heavy, crushing riffs, along with all the kind of atmospheric stuff as well. So I caught up with Sean from We Never Learn to Live. Hello, I'm Sam from Portals, and today I'm joined by Sean from We Never Learn to Live. How you doing, mate?
Hey, Sam. Yeah, I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks. Not too bad. All right. Well, we'll crack on with the questions. So it was your excellent album, Sleepwalk Transmissions, which turned a year old this month, that really made people kind of sit up and pay attention to you. Can you tell us a bit about how that recognition has been and how it's helped your progress as a band?
It was 4 years between the album before signing Ethereum Skyward. And so it was like, I think a lot of people, there was a period during that time where, like, even online, sort of people's like, is that band still going? Like, not really sure. We were kind of quiet. But, behind the scenes, we were really working quite hard on this album, to the point where, we felt like we'd actually basically written an album, and then started to think, we just kind of recycling the same album again. Like, stuff started dropping out, new ideas started coming in. And so, we were really, really excited to finally get some new material out there. But there was definitely an element tinged with some nerves in there, because it was definitely a progression of the sound. There was the songs were were sort of coming down in length quite a lot, and so we were uncertain maybe how that would be received, especially leading with the lead single Lumen on Luma, because it was so different. It was really snappy, like verse chorus structure. But yeah, it was amazing. Like, to be honest, like we were just happy to be releasing new material, let alone like expecting much of it. We weren't releasing it hoping we would suddenly get a new influx of fans. And kind of behind the scenes, that is what's happened, like, which has been absolutely incredible.
I mean, you had your release show at Black Art, didn't you? Which was I couldn't make it myself, but from all accounts, it was excellent.
Yeah, it was a really, really, really fun show for us. Like, really, really enjoyed it. Yeah, that was. Nice. I think actually, now that you mention it, like I remember at the time us sort of seeing, like, you know, a queue of people to get into the venue, and the fact it was sold out. And we're just like, holy shit, like, we just sold out like a London venue, which like on the last album cycle just like never would have happened. So yeah, it's been absolutely amazing.
So in terms of your songwriting, you mentioned how you're kind of maybe on the lighter side of the Holy Raw repertoire. But you do definitely have the kind of heavy elements to your songs. How do you maintain the balance of creating heavy yet kind of accessible and catchy songs?
I think a large part of that is, obviously our collective tastes. Like we've all been playing music together for a long, long time. And our tastes have always been, you know, I don't think any of us in the band are really into like super, super heavy, you know, like a lot of our music taste has that kind of like melodic edge or that thought-provoking edge to it, or that kind of depth to the music. And all of us, you know, had the same sort of influences from when we were sort of teenagers. Like me in particular, and our guitarists were like heavily influenced by the sort of UK post-hardcore scene. So like 100 Reasons, Ruben, Hair's for Heroes, like that kind of era was just like non-stop for me. And it was the same for those two guys. And so I think as a band, like what has been amazing for me as a vocalist is that there's never been that like pressure or uncertainty to be like, oh man, I don't know if we should be singing over this. Like it should just be like balls to the wall heavy. The guys have always just like trusted me and love my vocals, and they always just give me like complete like free reign. And if I'm into like trying something like melodic over something that might have just been considered like a really super heavy section deserves like super heavy vocals, but they like, I always just get the free reign to give it a go, and that's been really helpful to create that sort of sound. We all love songs and bands as well that have that kind of like moment, like you're talking about the moments to breathe, like that's sometimes going into that like that long drawn out mid-A, or that like long thought-provoking kind of outro or stuff like that. And so as a vocalist, I've always wanted to make sure that I'm kind of like leaving those gaps to kind of like let the kind of like atmosphere bed in where you can, and then like the vocals can kind of become like a complement to that rather than just like constant wall to wall.
Wow, and like comparing the latest album with the one before, you do have quite a distinct sound. So how do you kind of keep that sense of identity and continuity throughout the albums while still progressing? And also, we can hear it on the new single that you dropped at the beginning of this month, Ode. It kind of maintains that kind of space while also having obviously your vocals throughout all the band's career, which kind of is a through line. How do you manage to kind of maintain that distinctive sound?
I think the only way I can answer it is that we've always tried to focus on writing kind of like with honesty and integrity, and not put too much pressure on like this song should sound like this, or this album should sound like this. And because like the way we write has kind of really originated from a kind of like jamming and kind of improvisation kind of culture within the band, it's kind of like everyone is now in a position where they're kind of like free to express themselves. And so as a result, I think now hopefully we're just getting to a point where we're getting a discography where people can hear those common threads, just because everyone is just expressing themselves, and people's characteristics through their own instruments and music are starting to shine through. we've always liked a kind of cinematic kind of storytelling type sound as well. You know, like we've always liked, even though the albums and EP have sort of progressed and been different, there's always that kind of that big sound, loads of reverb, loads of delay. Like it's definitely the We Never Learned to Live sort of sound. And it has to be mentioned, obviously, that, you know, working with Lewis Johns as our producer through that entire process means, apart from the Ode single recently, obviously, but means that those productions all sort of have that common thread, because through him, through his ears, and they're all being mixed by the same ears as well. So even though the songs are different, they all kind of sit together.
Let the Digimeds carry you. Let the Digimeds carry you away. Let the Digimeds carry you. When your eyes become afraid to collapse.
So, going on to the album, the Sleepwalk Transmissions, kind of focuses a lot on science fiction and the themes of artificial intelligence. What kind of sparked that creative process and influenced it?
I've always liked or tried to write lyrics and songs with kind of like themes and like metaphors, I guess, and sci-fi. I've always been a like huge sci-fi nerd, like with novels particularly, and I think where Silently I Threw Them Skyward was still very much kind of at the tail end of quite like a dark sort of period in my life, I guess, and so the lyrics were kind of like a lot more raw, they were a lot more sort of cathartic, and even though there was definitely still a lot of like metaphorical imagery there, to your layman reading the lyrics you probably wouldn't notice a difference, but to me it was like I was specifically writing about specific feelings and points in my life. Whereas with the Sleepwalk Transmissions, if I'd kind of moved on personally, and if I tried to do that again, I think I would have just been frauding myself and frauding other people, and it would have been transparent. So I wanted to approach the Sleepwalk Transmissions not. I want to stay very clear, by the way, of using the term concept album, because I wouldn't necessarily call the Sleepwalk Transmissions a concept album, but I tried to write a sort of thread or an idea through the albums from sort of beginning to end. And I think in the times that we live in, like sci-fi has a lot to offer in terms of psychology and thinking and being aware of the kind of media that we're taking in these days. And at the time, I was reading a whole load of Philip K. Dick. I think I basically read through his entire back catalogue through the time of.
I'm a big fan.
Excellent. My goal at the beginning of the year, before properly penning the Sleepwalk Transmissions lyrics, I actually wanted to write my own short story. And I sort of said, right, by the end of the year, I'm going to write my own sci-fi short story.
Oh, amazing.
And of course, like I spread myself way too thin. I'm in a band. And I just thought, well, instead of trying to cobble together this short story, why don't I just try and use some of those ideas like as the narrative for the album? So
what's next for the band? You working on a follow-up? Obviously, you've just dropped this new EP and single. Have you got, are you already writing the new album, or have you got plans?
So we've got loads of stuff to work on. We're probably about 4 kind of songs in to like the sort of written songs, but based on how the last cycle went, like that might get further down the road, and those songs might not quite fit. Which is incidentally obviously what happened with Ode. It was kind of like where at the time we wrote it, we loved it, weren't playing it, started playing it live, but then didn't fit on that album. It was too late for the other album. So but like new albums definitely like in the works. We're a couple of songs in through the lockdown. Like the guys have started uploading ideas, and I've started sort of penning vocal ideas and coming up with vocal melodies and stuff, but still fairly early days. But
nice.
Like it's going to be, we're all just chomping at a bit to get back in the rehearsal room now to start writing again.
Well, thanks so much, Sean, for joining us, and hopefully we'll be able to catch you live soon, maybe by the end of the year, because you've got a tour planned, haven't you?
That's right. I mean, hoping we've got rescheduled dates for September. We're hoping to sort of get back out to places that we were scheduled for earlier in the year, plus some new ones. So keep your eyes peeled. Like, fingers crossed that will all get together.
Cool. Thanks so much for the time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Sam. You take care of yourself, dude.
That was a really cool interview. The thing is, Sleepwalk Transmission is obviously a great album, but the thing that I particularly love about it is the cover art, because I am a huge sci-fi literature fan, and that whole Penguin sci-fi classics, the font, the art style.
Yeah, it's really fantastic, isn't it? They definitely have the kind of through line of science fiction and artificial intelligence in everything they do, as you say as well, including the cover art.
I mean, I could put that album on my bookshelf right next to like the Foundation series, and it would just sit there.
I think it's definitely helped sort of take them to the next level. And the next band I wanted to chat about was a band who are sort of starting to take that step now, and a band who really have that potential to kind of grow. They are a relatively new band. They've just got the one EP out, and this is A Burial at Sea. So A Burial at Sea are sort of Liverpool-based. I would call them more of a post-rock band than a math rock band, but they definitely have a slight kind of jazzy math influence. They have a very kind of, if I say polished, that might sound like a bad thing, but I mean that in a good way. They're very, very concise. But kind of do also build up into some really, really kind of cool crescendos, and definitely, I feel like the Aces and Eights stage was perfect for sort of trying to nurture some of those smaller bands we're looking to kind of develop through A Burial at Sea.
Yeah, completely. I think one of the nice things about them, as you say, they are, you would definitely class them as a post-rock band, but what's nice about them is they manage to integrate a lot of the technicality of math rock, essentially, in the music without kind of deteriorating that gradual build-up and the kind of atmospheric nature of the music as well, which is very difficult to do with that style of band.
I think there's something to be said about the fact that when they go into a quiet room and they can still kind of get everyone to go whisper quiet themselves and just listen to what's going on. I mean, I have this prevailing memory of The Burial at Sea, which is when I first had the pleasure of seeing them at JT Saw with Button Pusher in Nottingham, which I think was where a few of us saw them for the first time. And it completely blew me away because they were able to take this huge, quite fairly large number of members in the band, for the sound, and just like, they were able to build up from a very, very small amount of music into something which was a lot more expansive. Just like every song would explode in its own way. And it was just really quite magical to see that sort of, that band synergy, I suppose I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Obviously for Portals, one of our core ethos is trying to help people discover their new favourite band and bands they wouldn't otherwise have had access to. But one of the best parts of Portals as a team, being four of us, is that that happens even within us as a team. In the sense
yes.
that, so I think I'm the only one of the four of us who hadn't come across Burial at Sea before they came up in conversation during the booking process for the 2020 festival. And again, I was able to experience that joy of discovering a band that I'd never come across before, but was definitely, for me, it was, when you brought them up and we sent the links around and had a listen to, and I thought, okay, yeah, this is very, as Ashley said, polished is a good word in the positive sense. This is a very very well executed post rock. This is really nice. I'm a post rock guy, so I'm enjoying this. And then suddenly this janky ass riff comes in, like, oh shit, okay, yeah. And that blend that they manage is something that I think is extremely difficult to accomplish with it sounding organic, going from those kind of styles and mashing them together. And that was what really sort of blew me away, I guess. So thank you, team, for introducing me to another band.
Exactly. Well, they're a really impactful band to hear for the first time. And again, one of the great things about being able to do this festival and to book this wide gamut of bands from different styles is that we can try and share that impact, that first time impact. You see a band and they completely floor you by defying your expectations. And A Burial at Sea are like emblematic of that to me.
talking about sort of interesting experimentation and instrumentation leads me on to the next band that I chatted with, which is Human Pyramids, who certainly have a wide array of sort of instrumentation.
Very wide.
Very wide, yeah.
To say
I
the
mean,
least.
you'd sort of call it a small orchestra, basically. I chatted to Paul Russell from the band, who was sort of the mastermind behind the project. You might also know him from the math rock band Axes, but I would describe Human Pyramids as much more kind of playful and sort of joyful, and with a kind of wide, broad selection of loads of different instruments and sounds that he uses. So I caught up with him recently.
Thanks for joining us, Paul. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, obviously, about Human Pyramids, who we were excited to have play at the festival. Firstly, where did the idea of Human Pyramids come from?
I used to do this like breakcore solo project that was just like a laptop and quite a bit like Square Pusher, I suppose. And what happened was I found this acoustic guitar. And I started trying to write breakcore with acoustic guitars, and it just sounded really crap. So I thought I'll use real instruments instead of like computers, and then it just kind of snowballed out of control from there, and took like 3 years. And I was like, who knows a cellist, or who knows a trumpet player, and just kind of fitting it all together in a weird way.
Yeah.
And that was Human Pyramids, basically. But it started with an acoustic guitar, and then it just kind of went off into just like friends and friends of friends playing on a record that it was never meant to be a band. It was just meant to be some kind of audacious solo project. But it was Matt from Carefully Planned Festival who I had sent it to, and who said, "Do you want to come and do it live?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, go on then." And then that's kind of how it was formed.
So it grew quite organically.
Yeah, it grew very slowly and organically. Like the first album took about 3 years, and I just kept on like adding things. I didn't know where I was going. I just started going there, and then it like the way that it all kind of came together was just about because I've been asked before by composers and people have said, "Why have you used those instruments? Why is it like a French horn, a tuba, and 2 trumpets?" Well, it was just the only people that I knew. Like I stayed at my mate Gordon's house, and they were the instruments that were in the house. Yeah. So it was just, and that's how.
So do you write all the parts for everything, basically?
Yeah.
And
notate
it all out?
I notate it all out really badly. Yeah, like I'm constantly, I think I'm getting better, like after however many years of like, the thing that I always struggle with is remembering that like brass players need to breathe. Because everyone else can just play all the time, but obviously if you're playing a trumpet, breathing is quite useful. Yeah. So I always forget about that.
So how's that challenge? You're essentially writing music for instruments you don't play, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, for me, it's easy, but for the players, it's a total nightmare. They're like, that's not physically possible for me to play it. And then you normally just change it, or you split it between 2 trumpets is what I always do. So you can constantly go, bah, 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 and you don't, so no one needs to breathe because you've got 2.
Some people may know, but your other band obviously is Axes, who we put on as well. When you started Human Pyramids, were some fans kind of surprised at the sound and the direction of Human Pyramids by comparison? Because it is quite different.
Yeah, I could never really remember the timeline of what happened first.
Right.
So I feel like maybe Human Pyramids predates Axes, but then also I suppose when the album came out, it was later. But do you know what? No one has sounded surprised. That no one's ever went like, this is weird compared to Axe's. I feel like they're quite similar, but they're probably not.
Talk to us about how you found sort of playing live shows.
Yeah, I mean, it was really euphoric. It's weird because the band is so big. There's like 16 people in the core band. 16 people in the main band, and then you generally have a choir that can be anywhere between 10 and 30. So you kind of are bringing together, at the peak, 46 people together to play a concert. And it's just an amazing experience. It's really fun to bring all these people together and to create like brand new music with everyone, you know, with the choir, and things change and different people bring their own flavor, and it's really good fun. Don't get me wrong, it's really stressful. So like the logistics of getting 16 people to get, you know, like if you're in a band with 4 people, like bad enough what Axis is going like, oh, when should we practice? And you're like, oh, Tuesday's not good, Thursdays, oh, I can't do Thursday. Like when you multiply that by 4, it's insane putting it together. But it's always worth it.
You're obviously born and raised in Scotland, and you now live there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I moved back. I've never lived in Glasgow before, but moved back to Scotland maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
Has that sort of influenced the songwriting at all for this project? Kind of, or like
the heritage? Do you know? I've no idea. It certainly feels amazing being home. Do you know what I mean? I love being here, and it makes it quite challenging with, because I know so much of Human Pyramids is London based, but it's been an amazing experience running it from here and flying people up and recording in different places, and I've had the opportunity to work with loads of amazing musicians up here.
Yeah, and you filmed the video for Lullaby,
featuring
the one with the ballroom dancing in the Scottish Highlands. How did that come about?
I've never been so cold in my life, because it was filmed in January, or was it January or February, or maybe December. We were kind of in the bottom of the glen. And so although the sun, it was a really nice day, although the sun kind of came up, it never hit the glen. Do you know what I mean? So it was freezing cold. But like all Human Pyramids videos, they're all the mastermind of John Lynch, who is our charango player and who did the all of the Human Pyramids. So the Relapse video, the Crackle Pop video, and like most of the Axis videos, the one, Wet, 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 he's just a genius. So he basically came to me with the idea, and I find that with John, the best thing to do is just to stay out of it and just let him do it, because he's amazing. So he just came up with the whole shebang.
Cool, a useful person to have on board.
Yes,
cool. And Steve Lamacq obviously seems like a big fan of yours and has been playing him a lot on Radio 1. How did that come about? How's that sort of felt? How's that been?
Do you know what? Steve has been really, really amazing to us. Like, it started on the last album, Home. I just sent him a CD just in the post, totally random, and then he just loved it, and he's been playing it loads. And then the same with Power Pose. When I sent that over to him in December, again, he's been playing it loads and got me on for an interview. And it's felt really good. It's nice to tell your mum that you're on the radio.
So tell us about what's kind of coming up in the future. Obviously, plans put on hold a little bit, but what's coming up for you guys? I started something really silly this year. Is that I made a New Year's resolution in 2020 to write a new song every day, and so I started doing that, and I got to the 31st of March, and I thought,
Christ, I've got 93 tracks here. And I just thought the idea of getting to the end of a year with like 365, because starting stuff's easy, isn't it? That's the easy bit. Finishing it is the hard bit. So now I've stopped and I'm kind of going back through the 90, and there's themes arising. So I need to figure out what I'm doing. The string quartet I want to really focus on is writing pieces just for string quartet is one thing that I want to do. And then I thought about doing an album that was perhaps just guitar, but I'm still figuring it out.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thanks a lot for taking time out of your day to come chat to me.
Absolute pleasure.
And hopefully see you soon.
See you soon, man. Bye.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks for that, Asher. Now, to jump back to another Holy Raw band, and it's another up-and-coming band that only came to my attention fairly recently, and that's Modern Rituals. So, I mean, I have to hand it to, I think it was Kat at Mad Smash who put me onto these. Basically, they had a gig fall through in London, and I'd never heard of them before, and she just sent us a message saying, hey, can you hook these guys up? They're really good. So I thought, oh, okay, cool, I'll take a listen. And I thought, wow, yeah, they are good. So I put them in touch with New River Studios, who are a fantastic little studio gig venue in kind of northeast London. And I thought, well, I kind of set them up with this gig, so I may as well go along and see what they're like. And as soon as they started playing, I was like, holy shit, these guys are fucking great. They have like loud, crushing riffs, paired with really dissonant guitars and quite aggressive vocals, but they still manage to write really catchy melodies and relatively in a relatively short space of listening time. And it really blew me away. So I'm really happy to have booked them for this year.
There's definitely a harshness to their sound. I think when you first listen to them, especially live, it's it can be quite a. I don't know. I think the first time I caught them, it's kind of almost like an intimidating thing because there's so much like thickness and bottom depth to that sort of the way it all comes together in the room.
Completely.
But as soon as you've listened to a couple of songs, you kind of lean into it. You realise that, as you say, like there's so much beauty hidden underneath it, and it's quite a hard balancing act, I think.
Yeah, they managed to do it incredibly well. If you played snippets of their songs to people, they could imagine they were, like a doom band in places. Whereas other snippets have such, catchy melodies that it could be, well, not a pop song, but of that ilk. It's it's seriously impressive.
There's a bleakness that sort of underpins their sound, but they also have that, like you say, that sort of accessible element.
There's something about that Bristol scene at the moment which we sort of come back to a lot in our conversations when discussing bands, and always at Art Tangent because of its proximity to the city. But there's this sort of restless experimentation where you see all of these weird genres like smashed together in the city, and I think Modern Rituals are a perfect example of how that works in a really strong way. I think they're drawing on so many different influence pools. They clearly listen to a lot of different stuff, and they've somehow made this incredibly digestible to almost anyone, I think, if you're into that sort of thing.
I mean, I'm noticing a trend here. There are a lot of the bands that we've been in these conversations, we keep coming back to the fact that they're bands that are managing to smash together different styles and things, and what somehow work, despite the fact that on paper they probably shouldn't.
Totally.
So it's clearly a trend.
Well, that's absolutely the joy of experimental music. I think once you find a band difficult to describe, you're onto a winner.
Which is why podcasts like this are a bit of a nightmare sometimes when we're trying to throw words around and try to understand it. Which is why we've included a Spotify playlist with this entire things that you can listen to yourselves, these bands, if you think they're interesting. But I think it's really worth saying that the uniqueness of these bands is something which makes it more uncategorizable, but that's absolutely their strength. Well, speaking of another band who absolutely mix the heavy, the doomy, the sludgy with some of the lighter, psychier elements, I caught up recently with Alex from Keloid, who are a band who were going to be playing our Holy Raw stage this Sunday. They're an absolutely fantastic, really interesting mix of a lot of different genres, and I think the fact they're on Holy Raw is emblematic of that. Their most recent record, Melted on the Inch, from a couple of years ago, got pretty widespread acclaim around all the press and all the audiences alike, and there's a huge crushing heaviness to them live mixed with this really beautiful sort of, I would describe it as prog psych, but these sort of softer Odyssey-like elements, which I think can really capture audiences. So without further ado, let's go to my interview with Alex. Hi everyone, this is Sam from Portals, and I'm here with Alex today from Keloid.
Yo.
So Alex, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. It's a shame we can't be doing this in person, as it were, but thanks for taking the time. And I just kind of wanted to, see how things are going and just ask you a few questions, if that's all right.
100% fine by me, sir. Fire away.
Fantastic. So just wanted to ask a few things about the band, really. I suspect a lot of people ask about you and the band and the rather interesting name, Keloid. Can you tell us what that name means?
Back in the day when we first started, it actually comes from a title of a track by the band Iron Monkey, which is a very dirty sludge band, which I don't know if you're aware of them. We're not necessarily huge fans of the band. We were probably more so when we were younger, but the name just got put out there because it was one of our track names, and it always just stood out, and we didn't really know what it meant. We still don't even actually know what it means, to be honest, but it just rolls off the tongue, so we just went with that, and it just stuck in everybody's brain, and it just, as a working title, just stuck.
It's got a musical quality to it.
It has, yeah. It's and again, we're not 100% sure what it means, so that's the kind of thing we like about it.
And you've been described as a band as a bunch of different titles I've heard before. I've heard stoner rock, I've heard psychedelic, I've heard prog, and anything in between, really. How would you come to define your sound as a band?
I have no idea. It's a bunch of weirdos in a room making music. I have no idea what we are. The fact that we get classed as so many different genres, I absolutely love, because there's not many bands about where you can't really pin all them nowadays. So, I mean, and we've not done that by choice. It's just a natural flow that's happened. And
absolutely. And I guess, as you said, you don't necessarily fit into any particular pocket. And I've seen you folks at a bunch of different shows in a bunch of different scenes, I guess. Do you see that as like a help, or would you say that sometimes can be a bit of a hindrance to you folks in terms of defining yourselves?
It helps because we're able to play loads of different kind of events. We can fit in nicely with a metal crowd, we can fit in nicely with a prog rock crowd, so in that aspect it allows us to be able to just go wherever we like or wherever we get asked to go, to be honest. But again, the pigeonhole thing, it's I like the fact that we can just float around here and there into different genres, and different people like us. Like my mum even likes us, God bless her. She's like 68 now, and she didn't used to like us, but we've evolved into something that she can actually listen to now. But we're all absolute music fanatics. We listen to so much different music. I mean, from metal to jazz to all I listen to majority of the time at home is reggae. That's my whole thing is I'm absolutely fascinated with reggae and the different genres of that. The other guys are all into different things. It's again, I suppose that just comes through in our music, I guess. But yeah, I like the fact that we can just flip around and bob in there, bob in here, bob in there, and different people who like different things latch onto it. So I'd say it's a positive thing more than anything.
Melted on the Inch, your most recent album. Love the record myself, and it, got some really, I think overall it's fair to say it received, really positive reviews across the board. it's been a couple of years now. So do you have any sort of particular highlights as that came out? Any special memories?
Just, we thought people would not like it at all. Because the previous album, Herb Enthusiasm, was very slow and doomy and get high, close your eyes, kind of lie in your bed kind of thing. This is just all over the place, I guess. But again, genre hopping here and there. But yeah, I guess the biggest highlight is people embracing it when it came out, because we were really thinking the reviews were going to be stinking. People weren't going to quite latch onto it, but just people embracing it is the best highlight since the album's come out. Like, all the reviews were just blowing us away, because we seriously were expecting reviews to come back saying, "What is this? Oh, they've gone all fancy and whatnot." And but we were just going with the flow, so that's what we've always done. But yeah, that's the main highlight, just people digging it.
Fantastic. And I think it's something, which you could say about all of your records, even though, as you've evolved, I still always get this sense of this journey-like sense to them, this sort of this wandering quality of progression. And it's different to, I guess, how I'd sometimes associate with other sort of genre contemporaries of yours. And maybe that's partly because of the blend that you folks have. But I'd love to hear more about your musical and lyrical inspirations behind that.
The music, again, with the music, there's no rule of thumb. If it sounds good, we use it. If it doesn't sound good, we don't use it. It's that simple, really. It's the lyrics and whatnot, which are written by myself, and so every now and again, the other guys will bob in with certain lyrics. Again, there's no really sort of. It's just what's coming out at the time. I don't really go into my lyrics too much with people, because the people latch on to their own meaning. But Precruve on the album in particular, I always talk about that one because it was about a friend of mine who passed away, and he was all young, and he'd been suffering with a brain tumor for about seven or 8 years. But if you'd met him, you would have never known. He was an absolute beast. He was still in a band. He was gigging, and he just sadly passed away. And it was around the time we were writing Melted, and that lyric in particular was about my friend Leon. A bit sad, really, but the message in the song is positive. It's basically telling people, just live your life, because we're not here forever. So that the messages are about life, death, and all the in between. Growing up as a kid, I'm addicted to music and latching onto songs, and then I've read in interviews like someone who you've idolized, and then they've said what the lyric is about, and I'm like, oh man, I've been listening to that with a whole different story in my brain, and then it sort of messes up your own sort of enjoyment. Not enjoyment, I guess, but it completely shifts the story, so which you had in your own brain. So I like to just not really talk about the lyrics much and just let people latch onto it. But there's always a underlying positiviness in the music.
Time is nothing when your life falling deep. Gifted us with the memories of the way you were.
So in terms of where you folks are going next, now it's been a couple of years, and I guess, expectation is growing for what the new record could sound like. Could you give us any clues as to what your progression is looking like, what we can maybe expect from the future of your band?
Well, it is sounding unreal as far as I'm concerned, and we're all buzzing off it. We've got like 7 songs that we're pretty much there with. We were meant to be recording in June, but obviously that's not happening now, which is a right bummer, but what can you do? Mm-hmm. So it's looking like we're going to be recording in December now, and it'll be released via Holy Raw sometime in the new year. It's very interesting, the sounds that are coming out at the minute. It's again, there's no we have to do this, we've got to do that. It's just what's been flowing out. Paul Swabrick, who's aka Swab, our guitar player, he just shits out riffs that just blow your mind every time, and that's always our starting point, because he's self-taught player, so he's similar age to me, and he's never had lessons in his life. He's got a real unusual way of playing, and he'll just come with something and we're just like, what is that? And then we just jump onto that, and then we all just go on a journey with that, and then it just goes off. But yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in this new album, but then there's a lot of like Away with the Fairies stuff as well. So I'm looking forward to people hearing it. It's we're still finishing it off at the minute. It's not completely done, but we are buzzing off on it. We are really buzzing off it.
Well, that's it. That's all my questions. Alex, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time today. Is there any other message you'd like to give out to those who are looking forward to catching you at Portals this year?
Just big up to everybody who digs the band, and big up to you guys for sorting such an awesome fest. The lineup was incredible this year. We're completely gutted. We were hanging on thinking Portals might still happen, and then boom, it's gone, and we were like, oh. And then Art Tangent went, which we were due to play. So, big up to you guys for sorting out such a cool festival, and we'd love to come back and play it for you if we're able to.
Well, thank you so much. We're really looking forward to seeing you folks again in the future, and yeah, super excited to hear the new record when it comes out.
Yep, me too, mate. Me too.
Thanks, Alex.
See you later.
Awesome, thanks for that, Sam. That was really, really cool. Next up, we wanted to chat about Elevant. So Elevant are a band who I know back from when myself and, well, I guess Sam as well, used to live up in Liverpool. They're a kind of, I guess, a sort of alt-rock, noise rock band, but with sort of elements of psychedelia and a kind of a really nice, almost sort of Queens of the Stone Age-esque sort of groove that sort of pushes everything forward.
That's not a comparison I've heard before, actually, but I really, really like it. I think that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, they're one of those bands that, I mean, yeah, having known them for quite a long time now, they have gone through a lot of different sounds, and I think they've finally hit their stride in exactly how they want to be and how they want to perform and the kind of sounds they want to make. Yeah, you're right. They have a huge amount of influences. I know they listen to a ton of different music, from seriously experimental stuff to groovy stuff, classic rock, everything in between, and they really managed to pull it off live as well. Really quite a special band to see.
I was going to say, I feel like live is where it all really comes together.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I'm not trying to knock their records and their releases, but for me that's where it makes the most sense, is because they're all really engaging, sort of visceral performers, and they sort of bring the songs to life.
And I think it's hard to not talk about Elevant as a live unit without talking about the way Mike Edward, the frontman, sort of approaches his guitar playing live as well. I mean, from the first couple of gigs where they were playing, he was using a screwdriver to start making sort of some Sonic Youth noise rocky-esque kind of weird bastardizations out of his amp. And it was always something which is kind of that sort of push for experimentation and not just having guitars sound like guitars has always carried that band. And it's worth saying as well, Tom, the drummer, designs pedals which they now use. So the further on they get, the weirder they get, and it's something I really like because they keep that approachability as well.
It's interesting, like, trying as a band when they try to tread the line, because obviously the further you go down the experimental path, you are literally trading that for accessibility. Right? That's inherent. Right? So when you're a band that has the alternative kind of vibe at its core, I would say, when I listen to Elevant, it is like that's the vibe I get, and then it just go like spike off in these different directions from that. But it's typically, I feel, where they return to. It's interesting that there is clearly a very intentional trade-off there, and it's like, right, let's push this way. It's a really difficult thing as an artist to manage your identity in such a manner that you are balancing that effectively, whereby you're not putting people off and too far, you're pushing the boundaries just enough, and then reeling them back in with those sort of catchier, more accessible moments as well. Again, mash of influences. It keep coming back to it.
I think one of the most impressive things that they managed to do, as you say, is actually amalgamate all that into like quite accessible rock songs,
like a 3-minute song.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I, by all accounts, they are an alt rock band.
Yeah,
that is
totally.
the best way to describe them. But that doesn't even tip of the iceberg in the in any kind of description of their music. It's quite something to be able to pull all that together.
For me, I think it's all underpinned by the groove. Like, you can be weird and artistic and experimental, but if you've got this cool sort of kind of nut groove just solidly going through the whole thing, and they're not afraid to sit on a groove a bit, in like, you know, some of the bands that we talk about, the math rock bands and stuff, they can't sit on a groove for more than one bar, you know, and that can be a joyous, amazing thing as well. I think how Elevant pull it all together is to have that kind of like, yeah, we are just going to groove on this for a little bit.
Now to one of those bands that definitely are on the other end of that kind of spectrum, OHHMS. Now, OHHMS are one of those bands that they are perfectly happy to sit on a riff for an extended period of time. And that is by no means a bad thing. They manage somehow to keep the interest going for, you know, upwards of 20 minutes. And it is something that a lot of bands kind of strive to do, but they manage to pull it off by keeping everything interesting and keeping it moving in a quite a subtle way, but a very engaging way. I caught up with those guys to talk about their music and how they kind of pull together all the different elements of kind of doom and grunge and stoner rock, alt rock as well. So we can hear from them now. Hi, I'm Sam from Portals, and I'm here with Paul, Cheney, and Mark from OHHMS. How you doing, guys? You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Very good.
Good to hear it. Paul, so as I understand, the band kind of formed while you were working as a music journalist, and you were inspired by interviewing some rock royalty. How did it all come about, and how did the band form?
It was pretty much exactly like that. Like, I'd already known the other two that are on this conversation as well, because they were part of the band we were in before, just a local band, and that had stopped. And when it stopped, I needed something to do, so I took up music journalism, and just started getting all these interviews in. Like, I was mainly 80s stuff that I was into, and because the editor knew that I was into sort of 80s bands of all sorts, that's who I would get shipped. And I got shipped 3 like in the space of a week. And as you say, like, for me, these people were royalty. The first one was Steve Hackett from Genesis, which was, I'm not particularly into Genesis, but I love like the way they would split their songs, sort of Pink Floyd-y, and like you could have these massive suites, and I love the idea of that, so I grilled him a bit on that sort of stuff. Next one was Swans. Like, this is in the order that I got them, and I remember just like, I was quite nice to Michael, but also I was a bit frightened because he's he's been quite omnipresent in my sort of life with regards to such a long career, and I thought the early Swan stuff I was so intrigued by it, just because it was so aggressive, so horrible, and yet arty at the same time. There was no way you were going to get someone into Megadeth, for instance, to like pick up a Swans record and get the same sort of thing from it. And then their final one was like a massive hero of mine was Steve Ignorant from Crass.
Yeah.
I sort of dwelled on this, and like I handed the pieces into the editor, and I was just like mucking around on not Bandcamp, what was it, GarageBand, as you do, just with a drum beat, and it was a drone, and I was just like, hang on, there's something here, and I'm just thinking of all those interviews and like that music I love, and just got on the phone and said to everyone, come round, let's think about doing this band. And as soon as I played them the idea and told them the sort of like thing, the genesis all come together sort of thing. Yeah, and it was just like that, as easy as that. Everyone was down for it.
Do you guys kind of have the same influences in your songwriting?
I mean, roughly, like we all listen to very different music, but it's all still the kind of, all the music we do listen to, they could play the same festival as each other. It's not like massively wild, but like we all, you know, there's some people are more metal, some people are more hardcore, some people are more other stuff.
So we're really excited to hear the upcoming album, which is due to be released in June, Close. So I've already heard the radio edit for the first single, Alive, which came out a few weeks ago. Seemed to have a bit more, maybe a refined part of your ongoing like sound growth. Can you tell us a little bit more about the records and maybe kind of the continuation of your sound that we've grown to associate with OHHMS?
Well, it's kind of like the final part in the trilogy that we've sort of accidentally done. So we had Cold and Bloom, which came out previously, and they're kind of like, we see those as like EPs, and they're kind of separate from the record, and they've got a similar art style, and the first two have got a similar sound just because we did them one after the other. So this one is kind of like the final rounding off of the trilogy, and it's kind of, as you say, it's kind of, we've refined that kind of home sound, and it's not doom, it's kind of sludgy prog, progressive sludge. I don't know, you know, a name on it. It's just what we write, and it's this kind of end project. This kind of is unintentionally. It was us kind of saying, right, we need to round this off, you know, sound wise, visual wise. So, and that's what it is. And to expect from it sound wise, I would say, I don't want to say more of the same, but I would say kind of your own sound with some extra bits thrown in we've not done before. Like every record, I think we add new stuff that we just have tried or done. I think the songs are a little bit more refined, a little bit more mature. We've cut a lot of the fat off of it, whereas I think we got to one point with the recording of it, of the rehearsals for it, and we were like, yeah, that's probably good enough to record. But a lot of us sort of were quite critical and said, actually, no, we need to go back, and there's a lot of stuff that we need to cut and refine, and I think it came out better for it. And I think going forward, we want to take a bit of not a change in direction, but sort of sidestep from our sound and try some other different things. And this felt like a really good kind of bookend to that we've done before, and say, not like it's our defining part of it, but it's kind of like, right, we'll stop it there, and the next thing will be very different.
So are we expecting shorter songs on this release?
They're similar length to the other EPs. So you've got a few 7-minute ones, a few longies, but they've all been cut up into different songs. But which is weird for me to see it all cut up into different bits. Like, for example, today we had Destroyer come out and the video for that. And that's, for everyone else, that's just a song in its own right. But we've cut up one of the longer songs into different bits. And for me, I'm waiting for the next bit or expecting the bit before it. So it's weird for me because we've been part of that process of having it as a whole song. And as much as Paul says it's different songs, for me it's not. It's we're just playing bits of it on the longer song.
It's the middle of the song.
The idea I had was to prep people for what's coming next. So even though this is the end of that trilogy, I also see it as the end of that part of OHHMS, which is a strange thing to say. Like, I think, in all honesty, we perfected in my mind, like the long song on Exist with Subjects, that 22-minute song. I'm quite happy to like never go back to that length. But then again, as they say, it's one of those organic things. If it happens in the practice room and it's worth doing that, then fine, we'll do it again.
Your releases have come pretty quickly over the years you've been active. So, I mean, you know, your first release, Bloom, was 2014, and then Cold was the following year. Both, I don't know if you call them EPs, but
some people do.
Paul calls them EPs.
And then you had your debut album, The Fall, in 2017, and then Exist the following year. How do you manage to stay so productive?
The simple answer to that is Paul, because the rest of us are kind of like lazy, not lazy, but we're kind of like, well, I've written a song, or I've written a bit, through practice, yeah, right. Like we're kind of like not really like, we've got all the ideas and like the art side of it, but we need a director basically. And Paul is the director. Because if we had it our way, we would have spent 2 years writing the record and like really delved a lot of time into it. But Paul's very, in a good way, he's very much like, this is a deadline. We need to get it done by then, which makes us, it gives us a bit more focus, a bit more direction, and we go, fuck, we better pull our finger out and get it done. Which you won't mind me saying that sometimes we've gone into the studio and some of the songs we've kind of gone, we haven't really even finished this. I mean, we do finish it in the studio kind of, but the riffs are all there and the idea is just the composition, putting all everything all together. It's, we could play it like in a rough form. It's just all the extra layers are not quite there yet, which we add in the studio, and it's always worked out for the better. And I think those songs have been some of my favourites that have turned out like that than the ones we just write and then they're done. So I think Paul's quite a crucial factor in us having quite a quick turnaround in songs. We all add our own influences in as we go. It has a bit of a Cheney flavour, a bit of a Max flavour, and now New Stu, not so New Stu, has had his flavour, and then Paul goes into the studio, and I always think, I haven't really heard what Paul's going to do. Every time I hear it comes out, I go, fucking, that's even better than last time.
5.5 years, I'm going to be 50, and then I'm out of here. Like, I don't want to go to a live show and see a 50-year-old at all. So I need to get as much music out before then as possible.
I'd be happy to release an album every month.
Cheney's quite prolific, but if we didn't filter all of his music, it would be just complete nonsense after complete nonsense. So you have to kind of like take his ideas and go say things like, that's really interesting, and you take out all the shit bits, and then you're left with it's mostly really, really good stuff. You kind of have to like aim it in the right direction.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, and take care of yourselves.
See you later.
Thanks, Dan. Cheers.
Cool, that was really interesting, Sam. I mean, though, like perfect link segueing here from one band that make an enormous sound to another one that proves that you don't need many people on stage to be able to do exactly the same thing. I think we should be talking about Bicurious next.
Very true.
A duo from Ireland who are criminally underrated because they make just as much noise as bands with 4, 5, 6 members can make, and there are definitely only 2 of them. We see obviously a fair bit of that in this scene, which is a wonderful thing, creatively unbridled and really taking advantage of the tools at musicians' disposal. But they are gnarly as fuck and very much evoke those sort of wonderful cleft vibes, and I do remember when we had them at the Victoria in Dalston for an hors and they're all anyone could talk about.
They blew us away.
They sounded so much bigger than anyone I think expected to see when they had 2 people walk up on stage, but it was one of those things where just heads were turned. The thickness of the sound that they were producing through the multi-amps and the drums were just like, it was really on another level to what I was expecting, even as someone who had already liked the band and listened to them on studio records a lot. There's something, as you say, you mentioned Clef there, and I think that's a really good starting point if no one's heard them before. I think, bands like Clef, bands like And So I Watch You From Afar, bands like Alpha Male Tea Party, bands with a lot of melody but also a huge amount of groove and swagger to them, and I think Bicurious really represent a different style of that, I suppose. There's an inherent technicality to what they do. I've tried to play some of those riffs and I'm not good enough for guitarists to do it, which I think is always probably a good starting point, because I'm not a great guitarist in the first place. But there's something about the way that they lock in together as a 2-piece, and there's something when duos do that right, which makes it very, very difficult to stand against.
Definitely. Seeing them live is a real treat, because, as you say, they managed to kind of succinctly pull off this massive sound with the riffs and the groove and the intricacy as well that comes along with that. And it's definitely something to behold.
Intricacy that Sam says he can't replicate, and Sam's a good guitarist, and yet they make it look effortless as well. And that's the infuriating / wonderful thing is how it looks like they're just totally chilled and can do it in their sleep, which they probably can.
I mean, my favorite thing about them is just how kind of springy and squelchy the guitar gets. That's how they using the octave pedals, building a sound out from one guitar, and they kind of make it sound just very squelchy is the best. Full and is the best word I could kind of find.
I would have said girthy. Girth is the thing.
They managed
to
to
go squelchy girth. That's fine.
They managed to fill all the frequencies in a very satisfying way.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was standing still when they played the Victoria. Just everyone had was either just trying to headbang along or dancing in some vague fashion. I just think that they're a band which just demand your attention when they play or you hear them. And it's that's why we were so excited to have them back for the festival. We just had to get them in for a second time in the year, just because we thought that they would build this amazing energy up, which would just dispel throughout the rest of the lineup.
Well, I think their first sort of big, I wouldn't necessarily call it a big breakthrough, but a bit of a breakthrough was when they were put on a Spotify playlist. And I can't remember the exact title of the playlist, but it was something like Walk Like a Badass.
Yes.
Which I think really sums up something. I might be paraphrasing there, but that really sums up their sound, I think. And I think it's another thing that they incorporate, which don't think many other bands do, is the sort of vocal samples that provide a backing, and they make political points and kind of thought-provoking with their use of sort of vocal samples, as well as their sort of interesting music.
With the political samples as well, often being quite prevalent in, I guess, slower tempo post-rock music, where there's a lot more space in the instrumentation to shine through. I think it's really curious that Bicurious use it so well in what is a lot more of a tight sort of mathy aggro arrangement. They still get their point across, but it's in a completely different context and in a completely different type of song.
Well, it's hard to make a political statement whilst simultaneously playing these enormous riffs and doing it all with this sort of pseudo tongue-in-cheek vibe at the same time.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of my favourite kind of tongue-in-cheek, mighty riffs come from our next band, Alpha Male Tea Party, who I chatted to. They're a three-piece band from up in Liverpool. You might be familiar with them already. They've been around in the scene for a little while. They played at Portals Festival back in 2018, and we were super excited to have them back this year. So I chatted to Greg and Tom from the band, who kindly joined us in his dressing gown.
This is Asher here from Portals, joined by Tom and Greg from Alpha Male Tea Party. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, good.
Good.
Go on, Greg.
I'm fine as well, mate. I'm showered, unlike Tom.
So to kick things off, I want to talk to you about the upcoming album. Obviously, it's been almost 3 years since Health came out. Tell us how LP number 4 is coming along.
Yeah, really good actually. We've pretty much finished it, haven't we, Greg? In a way. So before all this lockdown shenanigans kind of happened, we'd got about halfway through, Greg.
Yeah, about 4 songs ish, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah. We played a couple live, and then I think just by virtue of having a lot of time on our hands, we've been sort of writing it in quite a hybrid way, where I've been sort of putting ideas together at home and then sending them over to the others, and then they've been adding parts, and then we've just sort of been doing it. It's a very modern way of writing an album, but as a result, we've probably been more productive in the last 2 months than we had in the last 2 years, really. So it's come together really well, and we've actually got pretty much got demos of every single tune now, and are more or less ready to get it recorded. But obviously, we'll have to see when we can actually do that rather crucial part of making an album.
Mm. So it's pretty much written, but you haven't started. You've just been demoing kind of at the moment.
In a way, it's quite nice because now we have a full set of songs to work on. So it won't feel as fragmented, perhaps, as it could have done, which is kind of cool.
So you've managed to stay productive during this whole lockdown.
We ended up writing a load of stuff in a really different way. So the album's kind of come out because I guess the thing as well is when you're jamming in a room, you tend to rely on impulse more than anything else, and you rely on whether like a section is making you sort of feel something. And sometimes if I think because we'd been sort of attempting to write the album in that fashion for about 3 years now, we were just I think we were just getting a bit sort of I don't know. It was at points it was feeling a bit fragmented, wasn't it, Greg? Like we were trying to kind of shoehorn ideas together that weren't really sort of fit in. And I think sometimes when we're sort of jamming together, we're a little bit guilty of getting too bored of an idea too quickly and just kind of want to move on to something.
Everything that's on there is stuff that we've just kind of gone pop, and it's just kind of come out. And I think the original idea was to kind of basically edit out all the bits that may have been of use, but we'd spend hours just listening back to stuff and go, that. You know, when you're not blessed with time, it can be a bit difficult, really, because we've all got a lot of stuff going on outside of the band. I think it'd be all right if we were in there for 12 hours a day, but we're not. So it's sometimes it's quite hard to kind of get your rhythm going.
You guys have also started a podcast recently about sort of trips, it's called The Long Drive Home, and it's about sort of
Shit gigs.
I mean, we can share this, Tom. It was always kind of because we do nothing but talk about the terrible gigs that we've had throughout the years, and just all the bad experiences of being in a band as well altogether. So we just thought, everyone's kind of we didn't really want to follow a crowd, but I think we've always kind of had the plan to do some kind of podcast. And just now we kind of had the most perfect excuse to do it, and the most perfect subject, because not that we know of, there doesn't seem to be anyone around who does anything similar. And it's good because the subjects are so broad, really, as far as playing in a bands are concerned. So it just kind of gave us the most perfect vehicle to kind of go ahead with it.
So you're sort of venting your frustrations.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yes, I suppose you could call it that. I mean, I suppose it is cathartic in a way, but it's just meant to be a bit of fun, really, because everyone's got a mad story to tell when touring or gigging or doing whatever, really. And it just ends up being absolute comedy, really. And I think that's why a lot of people like it, because I think everyone likes to hear a good rock and roll story, and every man and his dog is in a band these days, and I think everyone can kind of identify with something in it along the way,
The premise of it isn't supposed to be a sort of like negative downer. It's supposed to be quite a illuminating and humorous look at some of the experiences that you might sort of come across as a band. Although I have to say, some of the stories that we've been told are genuinely quite like astounding in how kind of just intense some people's experiences can be.
Horrifying. I mean, like they put ours to total shame, don't they, Tom? I think
our shit experiences to shame. I think one of the other things I'm finding really interesting about doing it is just the psychology behind what people would sort of define as a shit gig or a bad gig, and they seem to vary significantly. Like some guests that we've had on, it's more about like their own personal performances. Sometimes we've had people on and it's been more about the way they've interacted with the crowd. Sometimes it's been promoter shithousery. Sometimes it's been completely like ancillary things where the gig is like almost inconsequential. It's the circumstances around it. And it's just quite interesting to sort of see how people sort of perceive what that is, because it can be surprisingly broad, and there's been a lot more depth to some of the stories than maybe I think I anticipated anyway. And it's been really illuminating and fun, and we've had some really, really good guests on.
One more question, which is something that you, Tom, alluded to earlier, which is your studio Trapdoor. Just tell us a little bit about how that all sort of started. There was a crowdfunder and stuff.
So I've been working in as a studio bod for since 2011, I think I started. I moved back to Liverpool in 2018 and just had like a little mix room and stuff like that, and then sort of kind of started realizing that I really needed my own space to start tracking out of, just for various different reasons. But the whole sort of premise was at the back end of 2018, we lost Dan Beasley, my best mate. We nearly opened a studio together in like 2014, 15, and that sort of didn't happen. And I always thought that at some point we'd sort of go back to that idea, but obviously we lost Dan and it wasn't able to happen. So kind of took that as a bit of a kick up the arse to get something done on my own, and to actually just kind of put my head above the parapet and try and just make something and I just thought it would be a nice way to like honor Dan's memory as well. So it's named Trapdoor after the Cleft song. And yeah, I did a little like, what was it, Indiegogo kind of crowdfunding campaign at the beginning, just to try and help with the startup costs and things like that. And I'm really, I'm really happy with what I've managed to achieve. And it's kind of become like AMTP's headquarters, and I've done a couple of records in there now and stuff like that, and it's all looking pretty good. I mean, obviously I can't do anything at the moment, but I've been doing bits of mixing and mastering and a bit of DIY stuff. In fact, I'm a bit stuffy from inhaling sawdust from cutting up wood yesterday, so that's good. Yeah, so studio in Liverpool. Hit me up if you need any fucking recording. All right.
Nicely plugged. Good stuff. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks so much for joining us, guys. I think I've taken off probably plenty of your time already, but really excited to hear the new album whenever it should be out, and to see you guys gigging again once this whole thing feels a lot better.
Awesome, Asher. Thanks very much for having us. Can't wait for things to get back on track again so we can all hang out and have a party.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of the day. Take care, guys.
You
Thanks
too,
a lot.
dude.
Thank you,
See you
mate.
soon.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for Asher. Great to hear from those guys, and yeah, just fantastic band overall, Alpha Tea Party. Right, so next up, we're going to start talking about Pijn, who I think are a sort of a highlight band for a number of us, having seen numerous times, really.
When they played at the festival in 2018, it was packed in the Boston Music Room.
The BMR,
and you could not
Sweating
move,
off the ceiling.
Oh yeah, that was fun. But an amazing band that we wanted to highlight, and we were so excited to have them for this year. Sort of, obviously you guys might know, but sort of dark, post-metal, post-rock, a broad scope of influences, but this kind of crushing wall of noise sort of sound that they conjure up.
Yeah, I think we, when they played, it was just before or just as they were releasing the album Loss, and it was very special. I think they took a huge step up on releasing that album.
Absolutely.
In everything they do in terms of music, instrumentation, and the production of that album, and it's something very special about it as well. I think it's the use of the cello and strings that kind of really bring out a kind of deep-seated atmosphere that is kind of already embedded in their music.
I like the way that Pijn have always lent on the fact that they approach it from a collective standpoint. So they're core members of the band, but they are active, willing, and able to draft in other members to help out with recording, to help out with specific live shows. It means that there's a depth to their sound which can be both wide and also unpredictable a little bit. I also love it because at live shows you don't always necessarily know what you're going to get, because it kind of depends on the day and who's able to make it down to the show. So there are different arrangements of these songs, in the live sense, that can be really captivating in their own way. I've seen the stripped down live set, I've seen a very busy live set as well, and they're both fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting as well, is that although they are a bit of a collective, they have a continuous thread that runs through their music. It's sometimes not necessarily easy to pick out what they mean to express, but whatever it means a lot to them.
Yeah, I love their concept work, which they brought into the studio record. So their most recent record was titled Loss, and it is, is exactly what it says on the tin. It is a sort of a extended, listening experience reflecting on the concept of loss, which can make for heavy listening, no doubt. And it's quite cathartic to listen to. I find at other times I find it very difficult to listen to because it has a lot of samples from people, discussing their own experiences of loss. It has just this wide swathe of passages, I suppose. It's kind of it's classical in the sense of the way it has movements as much as they are songs, and I think there's a profundity to it, which, you know, every time I listen to it, I have to kind of be ready for it.
Completely. It's you know what you're getting when you're gonna see it live in that kind of sense, and it's always special. There's always kind of an emotional investment in it, both from the band and from the audience, from the listener perspective as well.
Yeah, it hits you in the feels.
Hits you in the feels.
Yeah, quite. It is. Yeah, it kind of, you can feel it in your chest.
Well, I guess, I mean, that's probably a relatively natural point to move on with, just because the next band that we have an interview for was me speaking to Matt from We Lost the Sea, who are, again, obviously another band that do exactly the same thing, in the sense that you have that emotional visceralness a lot of the time with their music, and where there are moments of delicacy and very pretty passages in one moment, and then particularly with their recent album released at the end of the last year, far then heavier and more crushing riffy moments as well. But nonetheless, they are two bands that similarly have that balance of raw power and raw emotion existing in harmony together. Hi, I'm Aaron from Portals, and I have the pleasure of being joined here by Matt Harvey of We Lost the Sea. Matt, good morning.
Yeah, good evening, good morning. Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, definitely not morning here. But through the wonders of technology, we're able to be virtually connected. So how has quarantine life affected you guys as a band? Like, have you still been able to get on with stuff, or has it been a quiet period?
We're not that type of band that goes, okay, cool, now I'm going to program all these drums, and then I'm going to do this, and then we send it back, and then we sort of put together a demo of a song. Stuff happens organically in the room for us, so we're much better at jamming stuff out in a rehearsal room. So we literally got one jam in before, like the week before our restrictions started here, and we had some really cool ideas, and it was the first jam that we'd had since, like, first writing jam that we'd had since the end of Triumph and Disaster session.
I always think that period just after a writing cycle, like an album cycle, where new ideas finally have space to breathe without feeling pressured to be either rehearsing or writing specifically for an album goal directly. That little lull period between is the best part, right, of writing music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've said it numerous times in interviews and stuff like that, where the Triumph and Disaster writing session wasn't enjoyable. I think we had so much pressure put on ourselves by ourselves that we just didn't enjoy it. And then after the album came out and we reflected in hindsight, and we sort of learned some lessons and stuff, and then we kind of went into that studio session with no rules and no expectations, and a couple of riffs, couple of things, couple of demos of things, couple of ideas, and then we just naturally jammed. It just felt so much more relaxing because there was no pressure. We've decided that there's no real, like, we don't have a deadline, there's no goal, we haven't thought of a theme yet, there's no rules. It's just like, let's just play music, and it just felt so much better. Yeah. We wanted to have a theme, and it really guided how a lot of those songs were written from my perspective, I think. And I think, like, I was pretty adamant with kind of sticking. And I just sort of surrounded myself, and I had mood boards and photos and images and stuff all over my room of like, you know, pollution and end of the world and like apocalyptic kind of climate change stuff. And it just like seeped into my brain like every day via osmosis. And it just really influenced. And I wanted it to influence my writing and the vibe of the album and the artwork and the theme and all that, because that was the general direction. And it really did. And I think maybe that was part of the reason why it wasn't very enjoyable, because the theme wasn't sort of like nice. Not that any of our themes are nice. It always involves death and sadness, but I don't know. But yes, we do. I think, yeah, I don't know. There's this kind of like faint thing hanging in the back of my head of a trilogy thing. I don't know. It's kind of just a faint strand. But I mean, yes, it's kind of like another thematic thing. It's a We Lost the Sea thing now, which I like, and it also helps with the artwork. And I think one day we'll probably just want to write an album just to be an album. But I think with the themes, it really helps kind of give us direction of. With instrumental music, it's for us, it kind of makes it easier, even though writing music is hard and writing instrumental music is extremely hard. And I think writing to a theme either helps it or hinders it, but I think it gives it some kind of direction either way. So yes.
Yeah. So when you're exploring these sort of narrative ideas, these concept ideas for records during, I guess, through the stages of composition, is it something that all the band get on board with relatively quickly, or do people have are there competing ideas for what concepts could be or what concepts can mean? Never mind what fans think something means, but what about within the band itself?
I think concept, music-wise, everybody has an opinion, and when 6 people have opinions, it makes for a challenging environment. And I've heard numerous band members from big bands and small bands alike all say that the most complicated and competitive and interesting and difficult environment you'll have as a creative team is being in a band where everybody has equal vested interest, and they're all producing their own creative layer that has to meld with everybody else's layer. It's going to cause a lot of tension, and I think that's good some of the time. It kind of creates this really interesting push-pull in the music, and you can hear that a lot in our music, I think, the Try for Disaster specifically. But with concept stuff, yes and no. I think I'm much more kind of like proactive when it comes to that sort of thing, and probably a lot more like verbose and mouthy when it comes to kind of like wanting to kind of get my point across. I think Mark and I discuss a lot at length via email or text message. It's like a constant barrage of ideas on a weekly basis, and you know, it spills over into the band, and we definitely try and get people involved early on, and you know, some people sometimes have ideas, they throw them in. Sometimes it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever, guys, you know, I don't care.
How have you found the reception to it, and are you pleased with the reaction?
I think the reception has been great, and I think we have wonderful fans, and I think it was the first record that we put out to an expected audience, and we had set the bar high, unassumingly and unintentionally high with Departure songs. That was something that we never set out to do. I guess you never do. You never set out to go, this album's going to be great. And you just do what you do, and music comes out, and if people like it, they like it, and if they don't, they don't. And I think that's what you've got to accept as an artist of all mediums. But I think it's been great, and I think, you know, there was a lot of questions that we asked ourselves about it, and during the process and after the process, and I had to sort of talk myself round into accepting what it was as a product, and some of its shortcomings and some of its mistakes and some of its brilliant parts I had to accept that were brilliant and really awesome. And I think some of our best work is on that record, and I'll stand by it and I'll back it. And but yeah, the reception's been great. And we charted in the independent Australian charts at like number 42 42 out of 48 or something like that, with Towers, with a 15-minute song, an 15-minute instrumental song charted in the independent charts in Australia, which is pretty fucking crazy. So I think it's been good, and yeah, I'm proud of it. I'm super proud of it, and yeah, months after the fact, people are still commenting on stuff, and I mean, Departure Songs is always going to be that one that, you know, like, oh, you're never gonna beat Departure Songs, you know, don't fall down the YouTube comment trails. People say some really awful shit about your band, but anyway, you're not a real band until people like hate your band or slag you off on the internet. You don't exist, I don't think, like, until someone has a really hot opinion about your band. We're just a bunch of mates that just make music together. Like, it still blows us away. Like, it's not the fact that all of this, you know, like, sometimes you do the thing where you go onto YouTube and you YouTube your own band and you're like, what are the views up today? Just to kind of give you a little bit of a boost. Like, I will admit that I do that, but it's just like, fucking hell, like, it's got that many views. Like, holy shit. It's really awesome. I really love it, and it's really humbling, and it still blows us away. I mean, I don't know. And I guess that's probably why I don't think we had a terrible time during Triumph for Disaster sessions, but I personally found it really challenging, and I guess that's probably why. I think I thought we would probably could handle a bit of pressure, but, you know, and we did, but I just think it kind of let it get to us too much. I don't know. We just kind of like, we just got through that process just by going like this. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Well, is this riff good? I don't know, is Ricky Gervais gonna like that riff? Shit, I don't know. Like yeah. You know, it was just weird. It's like, and then, you know, the whole Afterlife thing, and it's like, fucking hell, like, Ricky Gervais likes our band. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, what is going on here? What is this, like, this is some parallel universe where, like, my 18-year-old self is dreaming about what the band he wants to be in 20 years' time is going to be like. But yeah, look, I don't know, man. It's a crazy time, and we're just gonna roll with it. And I think next time we've learned a lot, and definitely next time we're just gonna relax into the process and not trying to, like, we've got that Departure Songs kind of like thing, which is great to have. Like, I'm not trying to like downplay that, because, you know, a lot of it's a really awesome thing to have, and I think a lot of bands will definitely kill to have that kind of thing. And
you don't need to,
as I said, no, I just
you don't need to tread a line here.
I need to emphasize how, like, it still blows us away, and it's not something we take for granted, and it's not something that we want to pretend that we are more than we are, or that we set out to be this thing that just happened. But I'm really appreciative as well. But yeah, and I do like seeing all the response from people around the world and all that kind of stuff. And when we toured it was just in 2017. I'm looking at the poster right there. Just the amount of emotion from people at the merch desk and after the shows, like tears and joy and hugs and stories of loss and sadness and, you know, and you know, misfortune and all this kind of stuff. And it felt like we were the people that they could talk to about these things directly, because it were all, that album wouldn't have been the same without the history of it. Like, we couldn't have just made Departure Songs without the events that preceded it happening. There's not a chance, and there's no way you can replicate that. And it's not that I wouldn't want to replicate that, but if I think it's just a good example of, like, how to focus tragedy into something cathartic and beautiful and artistic, and without that it would never have been the same. So, and I think, yeah, when you we didn't try and replicate that at all with Triumph for Disaster, and I guess that's why we kind of went different production, bigger riffs, different kind of, still Wheelers to See, but just kind of a bit harsher around the edges, and maybe a bit brighter in places, a bit darker in other places, but just kind of like, we just wanted to, like, we'd spent 5 years opening with The Gallant Gentleman on tour, and by the time we started writing new stuff, we're like, oh, we just want to get rid of that, like, have to be so bling bling sad all the time. We're just like, fuck this riffs, yeah, fuck off. Yeah. So now we've got that kind of light and dark, and I think it's really good.
So thank you very much for joining me. Oh man,
thank you so much for having me here, and thanks for booking us on your festival. That didn't happen, but we were super looking forward to it. But definitely next time, whenever that is, super looking forward to it, man.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
We'll make it happen.
thanks so much, Aaron. That was really insightful, and a band that really had sort of a profound impact, I think, on all of us. As did our last band, Nordic Giants, who were due to close out the festival on the main stage. Quite a unique, amazing band who managed to combine not just their sound, but the visual aspect of everything they do in a way that I don't think any other band quite does.
Yeah, I think it's hard to overstate the impact, at least personally, that I had seeing Nordic Giants live for the first time. I remember it was at a festival tent even, where conditions are less than optimal, but walking into that room and seeing that audio-visual link and just being completely surrounded in what they were doing was one of the most impactful, emotional performances I think I'd ever seen in the genre of post-rock, and it's absolutely something which will stick with me forever. But that's not to say as well that it diminishes over time, because I think familiarity begins to creep in, and there's something really special to find in them every time they play.
Yeah, they have that immersive kind of, I don't know, you feel like you're on a journey with them.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, as you say, the combination of the music and the visual element really comes to the forefront. And yeah, there's I can't think of a single other band that do it in the same way that they do. It really is something unique and almost euphoric to their performance.
The way that they seamlessly integrate the visuals obviously into the audio, I think that for a start, the first time you see it is quite it's surprising but also very spectacular. I think that's an appropriate word in this use case. But more than that, I think it's one of those things where it's always been a natural, like the logical conclusion of post-rock. Sort of to go that way. It almost has gone full circle in a way that a lot of post-rock bands have been inspired by soundscapes and soundtracks, and then to then write and perform live soundtracks to something the other way around has this nice poetry to it. But like at the end of the day, people are going to be more immersed if it transports you. That performance, the way that they combine things, it transports you. It's a full immersive experience, and that in itself carries then so much more additional emotional weight and power as a result of all of that. And I think it's one of those things where I remember the first time I saw them when they closed. As they often do. Again, just in case there's anybody watching this,
no spoilers,
who hasn't seen them, it's no spoilers, it really is. But for anyone that has seen them will know exactly what I mean when I'm talking about this. But the song that they certainly would often close with, I didn't realize until I just suddenly catch myself having realized that I hadn't breathed in probably a good minute or so. I've been holding my breath, and it's I remember I let out this big exhale, and I heard at least several other people in my vicinity do the same. But okay, so it's unified the crowd as well in that experience and in that immersion, and I think that's completely unique to them.
I think the way they step back as well from the limelight in their performance, and the fact that they play in darkness and let the visuals be the entire visuals of your show. You can see them there in a certain a garb. They're in a costume, but they're silhouetted against you. So while they're moving between instruments, one of them plays drums primarily, the other one will play keyboard, will play piano, will play trumpet. While they sort of move around the stage and stuff, they're kind of like they're always in the background. They're always sort of playing secondary fiddle to the music and to the visuals in front of them.
And even without the visuals, the music is an absolute joy to listen to. You can put on an album and just be completely consumed by it. Have no idea how long it's been, and then you realise, oh, wow, it was a journey. And then to see it live is the next level.
We couldn't really think of a better closer for the festival in that regard, I think.
It's worth commenting, I think, as well, just in terms of from an academic perspective almost, that another impressive part of all this is I think no one is more aware of the nature, the inevitable nature of the more times you see them if they're playing that set, which is so involved to choreograph because that's essentially what it has to be. All that timing, all that rehearsal, all that automation to sync everything up, to have everything go off at the right time, the lasers that they bring and all of those things to play into each other, that is a serious amount of rehearsal. So the investment that one set takes by them as a band is enormous. So inevitably you have to make the most of that and perform that quite regularly, so no one will be more aware than they are themselves about that inevitable slight amount of diminishing returns, the number of times people will see a repeat performance. So it's to their credit that despite all of those challenges, those immense hurdles that they face, having really set this huge ambitious bar for themselves as artists in terms of what they want to deliver in a performance, that they are still able to iterate and improve and surprise and engage every time you do see them. So they've stacked the odds against themselves and they still come out on top.
I mean, I've seen them a number of times live, and I cannot wait to be able to see them again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's worth mentioning as well that they've just released the documentary series for Amplify Human Vibration.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys have seen it. I saw the first episode about a former soldier who walks up and down the length of the country to raise money for to sort of ex-soldiers. And it's really sort of engaging and interesting, and it's very clear the band have quite a strong social conscience. But I would go back to exactly what you say, Aaron, which is that when the band comes together in the most profound way is when you see them live and you're sort of engaged in that experience.
Well, I think it's interesting as well, to their credit, that their most recent full length was called Amplify Human Vibration. It's all about connection, and their music, despite having, again, maybe this disconnect between the performers, they do everything. They pull out all the stops to engage emotionally with every single person in the room, and I can't think of many bands who do it as well as Nordic Giants.
Which is why there's never a better way to wrap up a festival than a band that can unify everybody and bring people to tears, bring people to joy. And it's I think probably the most difficult job in the world is playing immediately after Nordic Giants, and so definitely closing things out is a very good position for them to be at. And unfortunately that does, in the same way as it would have done for the festival, it closes things out for us here as well. So thank you to all of you for tuning in and for watching. We hope sincerely that you've enjoyed and been educated by the conversations with the bands. And of course, to make that happen, we absolutely have to thank them for putting in the time to speak with us, to have these interviews. We obviously, as you've seen, a lot of them have been global, and we've had time differences, we've had technical problems, everything you can imagine, and everybody has been so supportive and so willing to participate and to share in this experience that we owe them a debt of gratitude, and hopefully you enjoy that. But equally, obviously, we couldn't interview all of the bands, so a huge thank you to all of them for their understanding of the nature of time, and for supplying us, of course, with music and video so that we can make sure that everybody gets talked about. We will, just for a final time, encourage all of you to go and listen to all the bands that would have been playing this weekend. For a final shout out to our Spotify playlist, Portals Festival 2020. Just search for it on Spotify, it will come up.
And huge thanks to anyone who has held on to their ticket for what we hope will be an absolutely incredible Portals Festival 2021. Obviously, we are completely gutted that we couldn't hold the festival this year, but there are bigger things at hand. And due to the current circumstances, a lot of bands and promoters and venues have been hit quite hard financially due to the global pandemic. So if you are in a position to do so, please consider buying some merch for some bands maybe that you've discovered from this show or our Saturday show. Consider donating. There's the Save Our Venues initiative, which is ongoing at the moment. So please, if you can spare anything, I'm sure everyone will be hugely grateful.
And wherever you've watched or listened to this, be that through YouTube, through our Facebook page, through a podcast streaming app, we'd love to see you subscribe if possible. hit that button, because I think we're planning on doing some more of this in the future. It's been a really interesting challenge for us, getting all of this up and running, and as Aaron said before, navigating the time zone issue, navigating the video recording issue. But we think we found a place through learning together as the four of us to, maybe start thinking about how we could make more of this in the future. So definitely a space to watch, and if you're interested, tell your friends as well. We're going to, once these videos are finished streaming, we're absolutely going to keep them on live for everyone to check out in the future.
And thanks again for everyone for tuning in, sending you all lots of love, and we look forward to seeing you at a gig as soon as it is safe to do so.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye all.
I come to this magnificent house of worship tonight because my conscience leaves me no other choice. I join you in this meeting because I'm in deepest agreement with the aims and work of the organization which has, brought us together. Undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society, when machines and computers, profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people. The giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. Without sight. Now let us begin together. It's an invisible book of life with a lost opportunity. We are now faced with the fact, my friends, that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, that is such a thing as being too late. Procrastination is still the thief of time. Life often leaves us standing bare, naked, and dejected with a lost opportunity. We as a nation must undergo a radical revolution.